Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the latest edition of the La Piedra Spanish Property Podcast. My name's Sean Woolley. I'm Managing Director of Cloud9 Spain, real estate company, predominantly operating in the Costa del Sol and also the Costa Blanca and Costa Calida. And with me, as always, I have Mark Stücklin, who is the guy from Spanish Property Insight. He's the head of the data and the facts and the figures. I can bleat on about what's happening, but this is the go-to guy for the real stuff. And for those of you who don't know Mark, he's the go-to guy whenever people want to know what's happening in the market, what's been happening, where the data is driving us. He is the man to go to. So very pleased to have you along again, Mark. Thank you for being with us. And today, I believe we're going to be talking predominantly about the golden visa issue, which a lot of people ask us about. But surprising figures came out, I think, a couple of weeks ago now, which we're gonna talk about, and then we'll cover the last part of the of this episode by talking about something a little more light-hearted, but still very important, which is the importance of home staging when you're looking to sell a property. How can you make your property stand out from the crowd and capture that interest within seconds? So, Mark, I'm going to hand over to you to kind of introduce the golden visa section. What's been happening?
Well, good morning. Nice to see you again, Sean. Even though it's we've never met in person, it's always been virtual, but it's
One
always
day.
a pleasure. One day, exactly. So the Spanish Golden Visa, which was introduced in 2013, at a time where at the time Spanish government, it was the PP party, which is the Right of Centre party, and Spain was in the depths of a brutal real estate crash. So rather following in the footsteps of countries like Portugal, the government introduced this golden visa. The idea was to encourage investment in property, because they'd had a massive real estate crash. So lots and lots of empty and repossessed properties that needed to find buyers, and also to bring in capital into foreign investment in the country. These were the rationale behind it, much like many other countries. I think the UK's had a type of golden visa as well, but just a bit more expensive. Lots of countries have it. So that was introduced in 2013. But typically Spanish, the golden visa was very bureaucratic, lots of rules, and quite unwieldy, and so it wasn't very attractive. There were out there in the competition, if you just wanted a golden visa with a Schengen area travel and all the other perks, you could get a cheaper, quicker visa from other countries. So the kind of investor that was coming to Spain really had to have reasons to want Spain, not just a European golden visa. And so it wasn't a big hit in the first year. There was only 489 real estate visas granted, and real estate is the big, or property is the big attraction to these. There are other types of investments you can do, sort of 2 million in government debt, or a startup employing such, but those are all even more complicated. So it was really property that was the big star of this scheme, and it was a flop at the beginning, but they tweaked it and made it slightly more less obstacles to getting the visa, and it did a bit better, I think. In the high point, it reached 681 real estate golden visas granted in 2019, just before the pandemic. Then in 2020, the pandemic hit, and unsurprisingly, there was a 42% decline in golden visas granted in that year. People just couldn't come to Spain, and actual coming to Spain was one of the, the investor had to be present personally in Spain for part of the application process. And then in 2021, there was a bit of a rebound, 400. So before I carry on, let me just say the data is not that great. The government there's not like a web page, or it's not part of the Institute of National Statistics or the MITMA government. It's part of the Immigration Office, and they don't have a web page where you can just go and check the number of visas granted according to different categories. They make it pretty difficult. So it kind of comes out in the press. I think registered press outlets request date information, and the government gives it to them, and that's about as good as it gets. So it's difficult to to check this information and confirm it, and we rely on press reports, but that's the best we have. And so in 2022, the surprising thing was, 2021 there was a rebound, as you would expect after the plunge in 2020 in the pandemic year of 2020. So there were just shy of 500 granted in 2021, which was a 26% increase on 2020, but still significantly down on 2019. And then the surprising thing is, last year, 2022, according to a report that came out very recently in a Spanish online media called El Economista, but they claim that this was data that they requested and were given by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And so, it's not like a really obscure website. It's quite a well-known media outlet in Spain, so we'll take it at face value. And they say that according to that, there was 136 property golden visas granted last year, which is a 72% decline on the year before, and the worst year since 2013. So a real collapse in golden visa demand. And the interesting thing is how the demand, so assuming this is all correct, this data, how the nationality, the profile of the nationalities has changed, because traditionally up until 2019, China and Russia dominated the demand, and latterly China much more than Russia. So in 2019, 68% of visas were Chinese investors, and Russia was 6%. And then you get into Iran 3%, USA 2.3%, Mexico 2%, and then other 20%, others like all the other countries of the world put together. And last year, with this much lower figure, you have a change. So China was down to 44%. China was down to 44% with 61. Russia, there was 9 visas granted, so it's less than 10%. And then, interestingly, the UK, 12%. I think after the Philippines, so the third biggest country in terms of demand for golden visas. Of course, the UK before Brexit was never needed golden visas, wouldn't have been even remotely on the radar. And the US, just 5 visas last year, which doesn't really ring true with a lot of the anecdotal evidence I'm hearing from other sources. So that's what the data tells us, and it would be interesting to hear how you see it.
I think first of all, let's just remind our listeners about what the golden visa means and what you have to do to get one. So my understanding is that there's a minimum investment, certainly in the property side of it, there's a minimum investment of 500,000 euros. That has to be a cash investment. It can't be mortgaged. So if you buy a property at €1 million and 500,000 is mortgage and 500,000 is cash, that's fine. But you can't go and buy a 500,000 euro property and have half of it on a mortgage and then expect to get a golden visa. So there needs to be unencumbered, debt-free amount of 500,000 that's invested into the Spanish property market. And the golden visa allows the buyer and their spouse and dependent children to all benefit from what the golden visa gives you, which is the fact that you only have to come to Spain for 1 day a year. You can come for all the year if you want to, but the rule is you need to make an appearance once a year, and it means that you have effectively free access to the EU. So for anyone who's not in the EU, as you said, Mark, the UK now comes into that category, then it's a great product because it gives you the freedom of movement that you can travel throughout Europe pretty much unrestricted. There's no time limit to how often you have to be in Spain, and you can also, particularly prevalent if you come from a fairly low tax economy, you can still do all your books and your accounts back in your home country. So,
but you can't spend more than 183 days in Spain a year for that to be the case, because if you pass some more than that or more, then you become liable you become tax resident here.
Exactly. So you just got to be careful on that. But in terms of what the benefits, there's quite a lot of benefits to having this visa. So if you're not in the EU and you are spending that amount of money, then you think, well, surely it's a natural thing to do. And do you know what? We deal with people from all over the world. Some are in the EU, some are not. It's probably I don't know, 50-50 split. And the ones that are not in the EU are always asking about the golden visa situation and, how can I get to spend more time in Spain? That is kind of the way that it's going, particularly for the Brits, particularly for the Americans. So I was absolutely flabbergasted when I saw these figures for 2022. The fact that only 12 visas were granted to UK citizens, only 5 to US. It just didn't make any sense to me because it's not what I'm hearing on the ground in terms of the interest. Now, I have no doubt that these figures are accurate and true because there's no reason why they wouldn't be. But the interest and the talk on the ground is obviously not being translated into stamping the golden visas. Now, whether that's because there's a problem getting the visas, which is not something I've heard, or whether there's just, people just don't do it for whatever reason, whether they're advised by lawyers not to do it, or I don't know, but I just found it very, very surprising, considering I think anyway, it's a really good product. Yeah, because it gives you an option to live your life where you want to, really, or to split your time effectively. And for the UK market, then it's a great product if you're spending that amount of money. So I'm shocked. Now, whether we've just had a load of people talking about it this year and that will be translated in next year's figures, I don't know. But like you said, Mark, it's, when you're dealing with 136 visas, golden visas granted through property investment in 2022, what's the point in having it? It's surely costing them more money than it's generating just by having the scheme operating. And like you said, predominantly in the past, it's been Chinese and Russians. The Russians are obviously struggling at the moment to spend any money in Spain because of all the embargoes and all the bits and pieces and the sanctions. So I can understand why that figure is down. The Chinese, as you said, haven't been able to travel. But we have noticed a huge uptick in interest from the States and from Canada in the last year, particularly. There was a stage every deal we were doing was to an American buyer. And they're all talking about golden visa and they're all going through the process of getting it. But it's like, where are they? Where are they?
But if you can remember, thinking back to 2022, of your buyers that were from outside the EU, how many do you think were spending more than 500,000 and intending to use it to request a golden visa? Get a rough guess. Are we talking 3 or 20?
Yeah, no, I would say probably towards the upper end of that. So yeah, I would say between 10 and 20. Now we're not the biggest agency out there by any means. So I would, when I was doing this research for somebody else, and there's certainly over 1,500 estate agents in Marbella alone. So if you think we had 10 or 15 people and somebody, that's got to be a huge number. Yeah, and we're just not seeing it. We're just not seeing it in the figures. And I think everyone, I put it on LinkedIn and I shared it with a few people, and agents, lawyers, tax people were equally shocked that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so what, how come? So it doesn't really. It seems to contradict a bit what you're seeing, and it makes sense that the Chinese demand was because of the 3-year zero COVID lockdown in China. So the Chinese were basically kind of locked up in their homes and they weren't buying golden visas in Spain. That makes perfect sense. And of course, the 2022 was the year that was dominated by the invasion of Ukraine, which has a big impact on Russia. So that there's reasons to see why these two big markets were taken out of, or reduced. The demand was reduced significantly in 2022, but other markets like the UK, America, Canada, and the rest of the world would be unhindered by these things potentially. So one thing that could be happening is that because of the knock-on effects of COVID and the Spanish bureaucracy, which is a really inefficient, well, in my experience, is quite a. Many bureaucracy efficiency isn't something that you use to characterize many bureaucracies, although I have to say I had quite a bit of dealing with the Swiss bureaucracy, for example, getting passports, the British bureaucracy or the Swiss bureaucracy. There was no comparison, but it's possible that after lockdown and the fact that working from home and a bunch of things, that the state bureaucratic system is working slowly. Maybe there's a backlog of lots of golden visa applications that haven't been processed. I mean, it doesn't sound very credible, but maybe that's part of the story, that there were many more applications than visas granted in 2022.
Yeah, you would still expect to see some of them coming through, wouldn't you? I mean, I talked to a lawyer the other day, and he said it's a relatively straightforward system. It takes a few months, but it's relatively straightforward. It's relatively cheap. And I'm just thinking, if I'm a Brit, and we've had so many people from the UK, from the States, who are looking to make their life here in Spain, or at least give themselves the option of making their life here in Spain. And you're spending 500,000, which certainly in Marbella is a relatively moderate amount. I know it's a lot of money, but it's still, our average sale at the moment is around about €1 million. So it's still a relatively moderate amount for a lot of buyers. Why wouldn't you do it? If you're moving, say, from the UK or the States, and you're spending that amount of money, and you want to give yourself the option, not maybe giving yourself the option, why wouldn't you get a golden visa?
You'd expect everyone who's outside the EU to request one, just as a nice optional.
Absolutely. Because the benefits far outweigh any. I can't really think of any disadvantages, but the benefits are there, and also people, particularly for people who want to put their kids through schools and give them the opportunity to grow in a place like Spain, then you would expect. I don't know. I'd still find it mind-boggling. Maybe they've missed a zero off the figures or something.
Well, actually, like I tried to stress at the beginning, the figures are not verified. They could be wrong, and we'll have to wait and see. And I didn't see them reported in any other. I didn't see them in El País, El Mundo, La Vanguardia, all of the more kind of mainstream media. El Economista is slightly more niche and offbeat, but it wouldn't be in their interest to be fabricating, inventing these figures and claiming the source to be the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Why would they do that? It's not like that's going to be the scoop of the century and that's going to, get them lots of new readers. It's not really clickbait. It doesn't really add up. So, what to make of these figures? But it's quite possible that in retrospect they turn out to be wrong and that it was much higher. So we'll just have to wait and see, because there will come a point when there will be it'll be reported, because it usually is every year by as like just a bog standard news item.
Yeah. I mean, the interesting thing, obviously, is that there's always been a little bit of competition, or certainly over the last few years, between Spain and Portugal, because Portugal has been offering a golden visa system. I think the entry requirements are a little lower, and there are also fairly significant tax advantages that were available with the Portuguese scheme, which attracted a lot of people. Even if they didn't really want to be in Portugal, they went for the tax reasons. Obviously, Portugal has recently announced that their visa is coming to, or has come to, an end. So you would think that this was a sort of natural moment or an opportunity for the Spanish authorities to go, we have no competition on the Mediterranean. Let's bolster this scheme. But there doesn't seem to be any political will to move it forward. As you said, in fact, if anything, it's the other way. They're looking maybe to abandon it themselves at some point in the future.
Well, there's been no official word from the Spanish government. So we know that I think the week before last, both Portugal and Ireland announced that they were discontinuing the golden visa, and in Portugal's case, it also seems that they might be discontinuing granting any new visas and issuing past ones. What it was going to be with conditions on issuing past one, which is not a great way to inspire confidence for investors, because if it's like, I can't buy it today, but then who knows if they cancel it, then I'm going to not be able to. That my golden visa that I've already paid for is no longer valid. Anyway, we'll see. But the Spanish government hasn't said a word on this. We know that the EU hates the golden visa because it gets people, and there's a certain. I understand it. It's like you invest in one country and you get access to all the other countries. If the golden visa was, you could only get travel in the country where you invested, but it affects the whole Schengen area. And so the EU's dead against it, and they've been putting pressure and regularly voicing their disapproval and calling on countries that have golden visas, of which there are quite a few, to discontinue them. And so Ireland made the case that, well, we introduced it at a time when we needed it, and those conditions no longer apply, so we're discontinuing it. And Portugal made pretty much the same case. Spain hasn't said anything. It's never been a great success. The government is a coalition between socialists and a hard left party called Podemos, and Podemos, hardly a day goes by without them calling for the golden visa to be scrapped and accusing the government of being on the side of speculators. They claim that the golden visa increases housing speculation, gentrification, drives out locals from their city districts. I mean, it's all utterly ridiculous, because it's such a tiny segment, and it's also a high-end segment. This has no impact on the housing market, and it's arguably never did. And so the point of introducing it was kind of by almost irrelevant. But you could see that the Spanish government gets flack from its left, from the left, for a program that doesn't really work much. And if these figures are correct, it's almost totally ineffective. Then why take the political hit and keep it in place, especially when Portugal and Ireland have already given us a set the ball rolling? So I'm surprised.
I think if they do eradicate the golden visa system here in Spain, they need to make sure that the people who have already obtained the visas legitimately are entitled to them. Do you know what I mean? I think you can't. I mean, this is what they're complaining about, isn't it, in Portugal, that there may be a case of not backdating it, so that people who've got one are now sitting there thinking, well, have I got one? Have I not got one? It's there has to be a degree of common sense involved with this. And as you said, we're not talking about big numbers. We're talking about 136 people. I mean, that's nothing.
If that number's true, yeah.
That number's true.
But I wouldn't be. It doesn't look promising for the Spanish golden visa, but the government hasn't said anything. It hasn't given even any indication. I mean, the coalition partner, members of the government are, made it clear that they want it to be cancelled, but the government itself hasn't made any official statement. So for now, it's still there. And like you said, it could be an opportunity if Portugal's now cancelled it, then it's the only Iberian golden visa, and it could bring in a lot of, that could be, so we could get all of Portugal's potential golden visa investors. And it definitely contributes to demand in some segments, but it's very diffuse. I mean, let's face it, if the Russians and the Chinese were 70% of demand for most of the years of the golden visa's life so far, the Chinese are, and you don't have to, but you can buy 5 flats of 100,000, or parking places, or commercial units. You don't have to buy residential. Although I've got the impression that most of the Chinese investors went for residential, but a bit of a mix there. So it's not. I'm not sure that. I mean, I think I can see how it could really benefit a place like Marbella, where Americans and Chinese, and Brits can. It's just an added plus. And that can be quite helpful sometimes in making the decision.
Absolutely. And also, I think it's difficult when you advertise the place as the California of Europe, and then Californians can't come, or no why.
No Californians welcome.
Yeah, exactly. If you're American, sorry, you can't come to the California of Europe. It's all a bit crazy, but let's keep an eye on it. I'm sure it'll be something we discuss as the weeks and months pass. Let's move on just to the last bit of this particular episode, which is a little bugbear of mine, really, which is home staging. Might sound a little bit boring, but it's so important. We see hundreds of properties a year, as you can imagine, and I would honestly say, I mean, this is for the resale market rather than new developments, because new developments, they tend to have a show flat or a show home, which is always lovely. It's always very nicely furnished. It smells right. It feels right. There's a nice temperature. There's a little bit of music, and you feel at home. That's the whole point. You walk into a show home and you think, "Wow, I want this one." Very often, developers that do actually sell the show home and have to move the show home somewhere else because they keep selling the one that they've staged. Resale properties, it's a different ball game, because obviously you're relying on a vendor's individual taste and style and standards. when you show that house. So, for instance, we can walk into a place, and if the furniture's not right, if the lighting isn't right, if the ambience isn't right, if it feels cold or too hot, or what, it can put someone off within seconds. And particularly if you're then going to show them a new development where everything is going to be amazing and lovely, then that resale property, suddenly it sinks like a stone in terms of the pecking order.
It's the put off. You can use a sort of a resale as a put off to bring down people's expectations.
Yeah, and lots of agents do that. They'll show them 3 grotty resales, knowing that they're grotty, then take them into something new and sell them that and make double their money and be like, oh, hang on a minute. So you have to be careful of that. But what we try and do is we always try and, if we have a tour where you've got 3 or 4 resale properties that you're opening up, so the vendor isn't there, then we have to make sure to open them up in advance, because there's nothing worse than turning the key and you walk in, the lights are all off, the blinds are all drawn, so it looks dark, it looks miserable, you can't really see anything, and then the agent's going around trying to open everything up. You've lost it. By that time, the client has decided, the client's on the way out, because they've looked and gone, well, it's nothing. I can't see anything. It's dark. It's miserable. It's cold. There's no light.
Smelly.
I'm out. So you've lost the opportunity. So we always try and get there beforehand to open it up and to air it and what we always do, we always put every light on in the apartment or in the villa or whatever it might be. Even if it's a bright sunny day, we light it up. That's what they do in show homes. If you go into a show home, it doesn't matter what time of the day it is, it's always lit up. So we do that. We make sure that the blinds are up, that if it's a freezing cold day, we put the warm air on, if vice versa. And we just try and give it a little bit of a boost. We all have little air fresheners that we take around just in case somewhere smells a bit musty, which it can do if it's not opened up. And also what we do with the owner's permission is, if there's any very personal photographs, pictures of the kids and blah, blah, we'll just put them in a drawer, because people want to walk into a place and imagine it as theirs. They don't want to see it as yours. So we always try and depersonalize and unclutter. And that means, no dirty dishes in the sink, no pants on the washing line. And we've seen this. Please, this is something that happens all the time. The beds aren't made. It's like, oh my God, let's give ourselves half a chance of selling this. And if things aren't perfect, then you've lost that chance. And I think I mentioned in another episode we did that people, I think because it's a second home rather than the primary home, a lot of vendors are reluctant to invest in staging. So when we say, look, we have honest conversations with our vendors, they say, Sean, why isn't it selling? You've told me it's the right price. Why isn't it selling? It's a very difficult conversation. Do we tell them honestly? Well, it's because of that stained brown leather sofa that you've had for 20 years. That puts people off. Do we tell them that? Yes, we do. And if it means that vendors decide to go with another agent, then so be it. But we've got to be honest and give themselves give them an opportunity to put things right. And if it means they need to go and spend €1,000 on a new sofa, so be it. We've had discussions with a vendor whose window blinds were all askew, and you couldn't roll them up and you couldn't roll them down. They were, it looked like a squat. And we said, look, we are not showing this property again unless you sort that out. Oh, it's going to cost me £2,000 or something. Well, so be it. But you're not going to get any money from a sale unless you do that. I'm starting to rant, aren't I?
But do you see? No, it's interesting. Do you see? Does it actually make a difference that if a house assuming if you had 2 identical units and furnished in a similar style or whatever, but one was staged and one was not, does the staged one sell quicker and at a better price than the other one?
Always. And do you know what? The other interesting thing is when a vendor is actually living in their place or they're staying there, and we request a viewing, and they, we often ask them, do you mind just setting everything up and then leaving, just hide around the back and just let us deal with the viewing, because there's nothing worse for an agent than having a vendor there, because the vendor kind of follows you around. And they start, because it's their own place, of course, enthusiasm takes over, and they start chipping in and saying, we've got this so-and-so's a neighbor, and blah, 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 blah. That person's dog doesn't stop barking. And then they're also turning the lights that you're putting on to light up the place. They're turning them off as they're going from room to room. And I'm like, hang on, we might want to go back in there. And they don't generally, generally, not everyone, generally they don't do themselves any favors. They're not salespeople. They're not real estate people. Leave it to the experts is my takeaway from that. Leave it to the experts. Let them do the viewings. Because we know what a client is looking for. So although the vendor will think they're helping by chipping in, and sometimes they're saying, they're breaking the deal. It's very innocent by saying.
Yeah, it's counterproductive. There are companies that do home staging services.
Yes, there are.
Which is they go in and for a fee, and they're professionals, and they know all that, they know what bits to repaint and what bits of furniture to change or replace, and they can do it cheap. You don't have to go and buy new. They have like a stock of nice throws and pillows and bits and pieces, and that sounds to me like it might be. And I don't think they cost the earth. I think they're quite reasonably priced, but it sounds like an investment. If you want to sell quickly and at the best price, sounds like home staging, unless you've got an agency that can, your selling agent can help you do it. But I think that it's almost more like a specific type of service that is apart from agents, because you need, home staging needs to work with lots of agents to make it worthwhile. Is that worth doing?
It is. You'll be surprised though how many vendors just don't want to do that, even if it's a fairly minimal cost. They just don't see the investment return, and we will tell them. We will say, well, look, like the example you've given, look, your house is fine. It's okay. It's average. It's lovely-ish. But the one next door, that's also for sale, is better because they make more of an effort. And it's sometimes it's not about furniture. Sometimes it's about like lock up your kids and lock up your dogs. I mean. Because we get so many vendors who say, "Oh, as the buyer's coming in, oh, sorry about Sandy and Lily, my two dogs, yapping dogs. You're not afraid of dogs, are you?" And they ask the question as they're walking in.
Yeah.
Most people are fine with dogs, but
some are halfway down the street by that time.
Do you really need them on a viewing? And do you really need your child stuffing beans on toast in the mouth? And
but it's easier if you're selling second homes. I mean, it's because you get these empty properties where people who live in there. It's harder if you're trying to market a primary residency, because that's where people live and they don't want to take down. And the process, this might be on the market for 6 months or something. I mean, we talked about this the other day. The average time in Spain, more than 50% are on the market for 6 months. So they don't want to put all their personal possessions in a drawer in that period. But second homes, at least there's a good chance that you'll have it empty for some of the time, or a large period of the time that you're trying to show it.
Yeah, and do you know what? Most agents are lazy and greedy. What they want is for their listings, their own resale listings, they want a series of show homes that they can confidently show a client. They don't, if they know that a property is jaded or doesn't look its best, or has a vendor living there that doesn't shut up, or a yappy dog, they will avoid that listing like the plague. They will find something else that they can show, because they don't need the pain.
Or use it as a put off.
Yeah.
Exactly. What about, would it make sense to, if you decide, right, you're going to say you have a second home in Marbella and you're going to sell up, and to remove all of your possessions, I mean, completely everything out, all the furniture and all the possessions, give it a lick of paint, and then sell it as almost a shell. Does that make any sense?
Yes, it does. It does, and sometimes that's good. It very much depends on what they've got at that time. When we go into a place where, as you probably tell, we're very honest, and we'll say, okay, it looks great, but we can make it better. I would suggest doing this, and this. If they don't do that, then I will say, okay, two options we have here to make this property sing. One is take everything out, or the second one is replace everything. Because for sure, something that is fully furnished and staged very neutrally works best, in my opinion. People, when you're trying to sell a shell, although it can look very clean and stark and very impersonal, people can't imagine their own stuff in there because they can't get a sense of space. And so my preference is always to have it furnished very nicely.
Right.
And there are things you can do. I'm not saying go and spend 30,000 on furniture, but just a few clever things. You've mentioned throws. Sometimes it's about lighting. Sometimes it's just about a few little tidbits here and there rather than replacing anything. But people's
house plants, nice house plants. They really like whatever you've got there in the corner. I don't know what it is, but I mean, they can give a nice little touch. I mean, a friend of mine in Barcelona, who renovates properties and then has to sell the renovated property, and for precisely that reason that a lot of people can't imagine what it looks like finished. He gets this, it's cardboard furniture and beds, sofa. It's made of cardboard, and so he doesn't furnish it because it's not a big enough the scale that he's working at. He can't have a show home. It is, he just goes from flat to flat. But whilst it's on the market, the sitting room and the bedrooms have some furniture with them, although he takes it with him. You just break it down into but it doesn't look too bad. It looks surprisingly good, and you're right, it looks better than empty space.
I think so. Yeah, unless you've got a seasoned property investor who's used to working with empty spaces. That's
people. They know what they're doing.
Most people are buying here as part of their dream. They want to be in the sunshine. They want a place they can call home. So the better you can help them imagine that, then all the better, really.
Right. So I guess the bottom line is that when it comes to selling a property, if it's nicely presented and lit and clean and neutral, your sales job is just a whole lot easier, because you don't have to all those off-putting personal details. And I mean, because I'm in a completely different role in the real estate world to you, and I never go into properties or take clients around anything. Not that I haven't in the distant past, but so I've got some experience of it. But I just see because I do look at a lot of properties online, and the amount of listings you see where they're kind of the loo seats up and they haven't really cleaned the bowl, and the toothpaste is all over the bathroom sink, and the bed isn't made. It's just like some really you could almost do some sort of I don't know, internet meme of just the most appalling property listing pictures.
And the other thing as well, just very quickly touching on it, is photographs. These days, photographs, that's the first thing that people see about your property. They'll see something online on your website or a portal or whatever, and it'll be your property. It'll be, I don't know, 10 or 20 photos. And we get so many vendors who as we're listing a property, they'll say, you don't need to take photos. We've got our own.
No, thanks.
I don't even want to see them.
So leave it to the professionals. So professional staging, professional photography, if you're serious about selling.
Absolutely, because I see, I go onto like Idealista and stuff like that, and I see some of the photos. It's like there's no wide angle involved. It's just oh my.
Yeah, and conversely, I've seen a good photographers taking pictures that you almost can't recognize the property. It looks so good.
Yeah. But they're all amazing. Mark. They're all amazing. It's just a few simple tips to help people over the line, really. That's all I wanted to offer, and have a moan, of course.
Yes.
Brilliant. Well, listen, thank you so much for your time, as always.
Likewise.
I'm sure there will be something pops up over the horizon in the coming weeks that we can chat about next time. But,
yes.
I'm back into the sunshine. Don't know about you. Is it nice up there?
Yes. Yeah, it's the lovely, warm, spring-like day here in Barcelona. So, can't complain. Anyway, lovely to speak to you, Sean, and look forward to the next time.
Brilliant. You take care. Cheers for now.
Take care. Bye.